Hello, everybody. Welcome to the second video installment of a brand new podcast in which we discuss Denver sporting news, we break down the games, and we talk about what's to come for the teams we love, all through the lens of a bettor. This is the Denver Dollar, and I am your host, Daniel Shalansky. Without further ado, let's get to it. The Nuggets play in the second half of a back-to-back road series tonight against the New York Knicks in New York. The first half was in Philadelphia. Let's talk about that game super quickly. Because a bunch of the Sixers starters were absent from that game and they were declared absent super late, the game was initially removed from the betting card and then added 10 minutes before the game. So a lot of people were unable to bet on the new and adjusted lines. For those of you who did bet on the new and adjusted lines and bet on the Nuggets minus 13.5, I have bad news for you. Bad beats are part of betting. Well, this one was particularly unfortunate. Once the Nuggets subbed in their four horsemen of garbage time, being Bol, Vlatko Cancar, Marcus Howard, and Zeke Naji, they allowed an 11-2 run in the final 2 minutes of the game to allow the Sixers to finally to close that gap, and the Nuggets only won by 12 points. While that was a bad bet, we are moving on to the next card again, in which the Nuggets play against the Knicks tonight in New York. The Nuggets will be without Michael Porter Jr. Last week it was announced he failed to follow his COVID protocols. He was expected back for the game against the Mavericks on Thursday, but he was unable to play in that game due to the fact that he had already missed a lot of time for not following COVID protocols, and he continued to breach the COVID protocols. As for the Knicks, they will be without Dennis Smith Jr., Frank Ntilikina, rookie Obi Toppin as well. Those guys are all considered out. There are a few players that are day-to-day that we do not know if they will be present in this game yet. Kevin Knox is a game-time decision, and Taj Gibson, who was newly acquired 3 days ago, he might be ready to play tonight, but he is also considered day-to-day. The Knicks, as of now, are 5-4, and they are looking hot. They've won 3 out of their last 4 games. We were all excited to see the most improved player showdown between the top 2 favorites to win the most improved player being not the top 2. Between the second and the third favorite candidates to win the most improved player, including Julius Randle and Michael Porter Jr. However, again, Michael Porter Jr. is absent for this game. Julius Randle is the only player not named Nikola Jokic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, or Luka Doncic to lead his team in all categories. This includes rebounds, points, and assists. Now, the Nuggets game last night didn't necessarily inspire confidence, and they're playing a back-to-back away road game series. They might be tired tonight. Let's talk about some numbers. So the money line in this game, the Nuggets are favored in this game. If you take the Nuggets in the money line, which I usually advise that you don't even take the money line, you stay away from that. We can talk about better values if you are confident one team will win later on in the scoring card. But let's start with the money line. Real quick, I'm just going to give a template as to what the show will look like today. I will talk about the money line, then I will talk about the spread, then I will talk about the total team over-under. After that, I will talk about the total by each individual team, and then I will talk about the three-way money line, which I always like better than the normal money line. After that, I will talk about individual player statistics along with player specials, and I will conclude the show with my patented tip-off analysis. Let's dive into some numbers. The Nuggets are minus 225 to win this game straight up, while the Knicks are plus 180. Well, we can expect the Nuggets to win. They might be tired, and other than their defense didn't necessarily inspire confidence, but they were shooting the ball very well. This game, I don't necessarily think it's a toss-up, but at minus 225, I don't like the value for the Nuggets, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend betting on the Knicks either, especially because they're unlikely to win in this game. The spread is Nuggets minus 6, Knicks plus 6. I think if the Nugs are able to play a full game and figure it out, they shot the ball excellent against the 76ers last game. They just need to figure out some defense. I think if they are able to win the game, they can win it with confidence and will win by 6 or more points. I would pick the Nuggets in the spread, but again, there are better values I like, especially if you like the Nuggets later on. The Nuggets, if you take the Nuggets against the spread, you're looking at minus 112, whereas if you take the Knicks, you're looking at minus 109. Now let's look at the over-under for this game. The total over-under in this game is 214 points. the over being locked in at minus 109, the under being locked in at minus 112. In this game, I like the over. Let me give a few reasons. Now, despite the fact that the Knicks have the second best defensive rating in the league, the Nuggets have amongst the worst. They have the 23rd worst in terms of points allowed in the league. Now, over-under is 214 points in this game. The Nuggets have hit this mark of 200 total 14 points combined with their opponents in 8 out of their 9 games this season. While the Knicks have only done it in 3 out of 9 games this season, they haven't necessarily played such offensive juggernauts other than, the Bucks and the Hawks. And when they did play those teams, they easily surpassed that mark of 214 points. The math tells us to go over on the 214 points, and there's even more math behind that. The Denver Nuggets are averaging 116.8 points this season. Yes, they've faced off against defenses that aren't necessarily as dominant as the Knicks in the past, so you could expect that number to go down. But the Knicks are averaging 102.7 points per game. If you add those, that's well over the mark of 214 points that is set at the over and under for this game. But in addition to that, the Knicks are playing against the 23rd worst defense in the league. While you can expect the Denver scoring to be down a little bit, you can expect the Knicks scoring to be up a little bit. I think those will kind of account for each other, and I like the over here. In terms of the fourth quarter three-way money line, this is what I always prefer over the normal money line, because not only are you betting on a team to win through 4 quarters, you're pretty much betting against a tie, and you can usually bet against a tie in the NBA, despite the fact that 2 games ago we did see the Nuggets go into overtime. Let me tell you on the math behind some of that. Only 7 out of 136 games this entire NBA season have gone into overtime. That's 1 out of every 19.43 games. So it's likely that any given game won't go into overtime. Even further, the three-way money line allows you to bet on either a team win through 4 quarters or a tie, which means you're betting on overtime. In this game, a tie is only set at plus 1,400. So I would tell you to normally go away from that. It doesn't nearly reflect good value, considering 1 out of every 19.43 games this season has gone into overtime. I wouldn't even consider that unless it was at plus 1,943. But it's only at plus 1,400. Because the tie is, the value is not very good, and the scoring card reflects the fact that a tie is more likely in this game than it actually is, you're getting even better value betting against a tie in the three-way money line on either one of these teams. For example, the Nuggets are set at minus 190 for the three-way money line, whereas for the normal money line, they're set at minus 225. You're getting better value if you want to bet on the Nuggets straight up, and you can bet that it doesn't go into overtime. If you bet on the Knicks, they're at plus 180 in the normal money line, but here they're at plus 205, so you are getting way better value than the normal money line. I always advise that you stay away from the money line and look at the three-way money line. Now, if we dive into individual team totals, the total by the Nuggets is set at minus 109.5, the over being at minus 110, the under being at minus 118. The Knicks are set at 103.5, with the over being set at minus 120, and the under being at minus 104. Now let's do some quick math and look at the implied point totals to see if that gives us an advantage while looking at the totals for either team. The implied, let's do some quick math. The over-under in this game is 214 points. If you divide that by 2, you are looking at 107 points. Because the spread is 6 points, if you divide that by 2, you're looking at 3. Either a plus minus of 3 from that 107 mark will give you the team totals for the Nuggets and for the Knicks in this game. If you add 3 to 107, you're looking at 110 points. That is the implied point total for the Denver Nuggets in this game. 107 minus 3 is 104 points. That is the implied point total for the New York Knicks in this game. Now, there is a discrepancy in the stat because the Nuggets are looking at a total over-under at 109.5, and their implied point total is at 110. You can expect the over just, by the slimmest of margins just due to that math. In addition to that, you're getting better odds if you bet on the over for the Nuggets at minus 110 versus minus 118 for the under. If you look at the Knicks, they're set at 103.5, so with their implied point total being 104, you can also expect the over. This I would also bet on because they're averaging 102.7 throughout the season, and the Nuggets are less than stellar at defense. As I would go as far as to say they are very bad on defense. You can expect more than 103.5 for the Knicks, even though you're getting slightly worse odds with the over at minus 120 versus minus 104. I like the over for both teams, which means I have to like the total over for the game at 214. Now, another thing that I want to quickly talk about is that I don't believe in taking double chance bets. A double chance bet is similar to the three-way money line in that you're betting what the outcome will be at the end of the fourth quarter. However, instead of betting on a victor, you're betting on two separate things. You can bet on a Nuggets win in tandem with a tie and have your odds greatly decreased. You can bet on a Nuggets win in tandem with a Knicks win and just bet against overtime. You can pair any two combinations of the three-way money line, but your payout is going to be significantly worse. I always advise that you bet against or you don't take the double chance odds. Now let's talk about some individual player data. For Jamal Murray in this game, he's set at 22.5 points with the over being minus 112, the under being minus 109. His assists are set at 4.5 with the over being plus 100 and the under being minus 121. He is not on the rebounds category, but for threes, he's set at 2.5 threes with the over being minus 105 and the under being minus 117. While I don't love many of these bets for Jamal Murray, I do really like the over on three-pointers. Not only are you getting better value at minus 105 versus minus 117, but he actually averages more than 2.5 three-pointers per game this season at 2.6. Well, the difference is very marginal, and if you expect him to get more than 2.5 three-pointers, it's a very marginal difference. The odds are better at the over than the under. Another bet I like for someone out of the backcourt for the Denver Nuggets in this game is the Gary Harris over on points. Yes, he only averages 10.2 points per game, so it's pretty razor thin in terms of the margin. But in the last game, we saw him to go 5 of 8 for three-pointers. He was finally shooting the ball stellar. His issue has been confidence and shooting the ball, and I think he finally achieved that in playing against the bad Sixers team that they faced yesterday. At 10.5, the over is plus 100. While I do think he hits the over, you're getting way better odds with the over at plus 100 versus the under at minus 122. While still looking at the Denver Nuggets backcourt, I like Gary Harris to get more than 10.5 points. Another bet I like out of the Denver team is Paul Millsap to get more than 9.5 points. He's averaging 11 points on the season, and you're getting way better odds with the over than the under at minus 104 versus minus 118. Also, the Nuggets have had to play their other guys a little bit more with the absence of Michael Porter Jr. I would expect Paul Millsap to continue shooting the ball well and continue taking a lot of shots. I would expect him to get over 9.5 points in this game. I would expect him to even exceed his season averages in this game. Another one I like for Paul Millsap, I like his bets across the board a lot more. Another one that I really, really like is him to get more than 1.5 three-pointers in this game. Well, he's only averaging 1.3, so he's averaging less than that mark of 1.5 three-pointers. You're getting excellent value that is really hard to turn down at plus 175 on the over versus minus 220 for the under. Those odds do not nearly reflect how close he is to getting 1.5 three-pointers per game, and while he's still technically unlikely to get 1.5 three-pointers, I don't think you can turn down that value. For reference, Nikola Jokic is also averaging 1.3 three-pointers over the course of this young NBA season. His odds to hit more than 1.5 three-pointers is plus 125. So I also like the value there, but the value of Paul Millsap hitting more at plus 175 is something that I can't turn down. On to the topic of Nikola Jokic, I don't love any specific Nikola Jokic bets across the board for this game. I don't like any specific stat bets, but there's a few that I like later on that I will talk about. The reason being, yes, he's averaging more points than is listed on the BetRivers betting card. Yes, he's averaging more assists than is listed on the BetRivers betting card. Yes, he's even averaging more rebounds than is on the BetRivers betting card. But you're getting terrible value if you bet the over on any of those, as they're all significantly in the minus. I wouldn't like that. The only one that isn't in the minus is Nikola Jokic to get more than 23.5 points, and he is averaging 24.7 on the season. That's set at plus 100. The reason I would not take that is because Nikola Jokic has proven to be perfectly content dishing the ball to his teammates rather than taking on the scoring load himself. Yes, against the Mavericks, he scored 38 points, and when need be, he can take on the scoring load and be the primary scorer for the Nuggets. But in a game like we saw yesterday when we played against the 76ers, he only had 15 points with 12 assists. He was perfectly content to give the ball to his teammates while they are shooting well. I expect their confidence to continue to be high, especially, the Knicks are 5-4, but they're not considered, one of the powerhouses in the East, much less the NBA. I would expect Jokic to look for his teammates more than he looks for his own shot in this game. Let's talk about the Knicks side of the ball super briefly. There are a few bets that I like for the New York Knicks. The first one is Elfrid Payton to get less than 6.5 assists in this game. Now, this is kind of weird. Elfrid Payton has never averaged less than 6 assists in his career, and over the past 2 years, he's averaged 7.4 assists in his career. So you might look at the 6.5 bet, the over-under being set at 6.5 for his assists, and think, why would you take the under? That's because we've seen Julius Randle adopt a completely new role this season, and perhaps that is why he is a most improved player candidate on this season. Julius Randle is the primary playmaker for the New York Knicks. They run him as point forward. They don't use a point guard. Elfrid Payton used to be the primary distributor for them, and we've seen that in years past over his career, but that is not the case this season. He's only averaging 4.6 assists on the season. If you bet the under at 6.5 assists for Elfrid Payton in this game, there is a large difference between what he is averaging on the season and what he is predicted in this game. You're also getting you're getting slightly worse value with the under at minus 114 versus minus 107, but it's a very slim difference, and we can be confident that he hits the under. That is a bet I really like. Another one that I really like is Julius Randle to get more than 10.5 rebounds. He is averaging 12 rebounds on the season, so the difference there is not necessarily close either. And just like the previous bet, you're not getting bad value at minus 117 on the over versus minus 105 on the under. While the value isn't better than we've seen in other categories, it's still worth it for you to take that, considering the difference between his season averages and what he is expected in this game. That is it for the Knicks side of the ball. Let's talk about some player specials. I will dive into every player in this game and how I think they will do. Every player on the Nuggets side of the ball, I will talk about a few players on the Knicks side of the ball. Jamal Murray is projected 31.5 total counting stats. That includes points, that includes its assists, and that includes rebounds. He is not even averaging close to that on the season. You're getting pretty bad odds on the under at minus 139 versus plus 115 on the over, especially because we know that Jamal Murray can score in bunches, and while his scoring has been inconsistent this season, if he is due for a big scoring day, he will most likely exceed that mark of 31.5 combined counting stats. But I still like the under, not as much as I like other ones, but if I were to bet on Jamal Murray in this player special, I would bet on the under. Another one to talk about is Gary Harris, set at 14.5. Not only is he averaging more than that on the season, he easily exceeded just that mark alone in points last game against the Sixers. If he is able to maintain any of that confidence, he will easily surpass this mark of 14.5 combined points, assists, and rebounds. While I do like him, I do like this bet more than the Jamal Murray under because you're getting better odds at minus 121 versus plus 100 for the under. It's still not great value overall there. Now let's talk about Will the Thrill Barton. He is projected 23.5 total counting stats in this game. He's only averaging 18.5 total on the season. This one I like even more than the previous two I just mentioned because the under, you're getting the same odds as the over for Gary Harris at minus 121 versus plus 100 for the over. He's getting 5 total combined points, assists, and rebounds, less than his projected mark here at 23.5. That is another one that I think we can be fairly confident in. Like I said, we're talking about all of the Nuggets, even though this is one that I don't love so much. Paul Millsap is expected 15.5 total combined points, assists, and rebounds, and this one is in total pick'em fashion at minus 110 for both the over and for the under. While I would expect him to hit the over, I'm not confident enough in that to recommend betting on that. Or to recommend betting on either of them. The value's not there. Now let's look at Nikola Jokic. While I said I didn't like any of his individual statistics, this is something that I do really like. Now Nikola Jokic is set at 42.5 total points, assists, and rebounds. total points, assists, and rebounds. Well, the over, you're getting worse value than the under at minus 120 versus minus 103. We've seen Nikola Jokic hit this mark in 8 out of 9 games. Not only that, he's averaging 47 combined counting stats on the season. I think he can easily obtain that mark of 42.5, and while you're not getting great value with the over, it's still better value than is reflected in his likelihood of getting at least 42.5 combined counting stats. Now, another one that I want to talk about is Julius Randle, set at 39.5. On this season, he is easily surpassing that mark, and just like Nikola Jokic, you're getting slightly worse odds with the over than with the under at minus 117 versus minus 105 for the under. But just like Nikola Jokic, he's the star on the Knicks. He does everything for them. Those two guys are leading their teams in all points, rebounds, and assists. If the Knicks do have a good showing, I would expect Julius Randle to be largely responsible for it. So I can expect him to get more, and I like that value a lot. Well, I wouldn't bet on anyone to get a double-double because the only the real double-double candidates in this game are Nikola Jokic and Julius Randle. You're getting bad odds considering the fact that they're both averaging a double-double on the season, and the payout is not worth it. You're getting bad value there. But if we want to talk about getting a triple-double, I would like Nikola Jokic to get a triple-double in this game. It's not that I like him to get a triple-double, it's that I like the value attached to betting on Nikola Jokic getting a triple-double in this game. Now, he has only gotten a triple-double in 4 out of 9 games in the season, but in 3 of those games, in 3 of the games that he did not secure that triple-double, he only fell 1 rebound short. So even when he's not getting the triple-double, he is right on the precipice of getting the triple-double. At plus 220, I think this is value that you cannot turn down. Not only is he averaging it on the season, but plus 220 implies that he would only be getting a triple-double in 1 out of every 3 or so games. But he's not. He's getting it in 4 out of 9 games. I really like the value there for Nikola Jokic to get a triple-double. Well, it's unlikely, I do have to say it's unlikely for him to, and you can't be mad when he doesn't. The value is absolutely there. You can bet on this based on the value alone. Now it's time for my patented tip-off analysis. This is when I talk about who will win the tip-off and what the betting implications are on that. Well, the tip-off, doesn't have any significant implications in terms of who will win the total outcome of the game. There are some bets attached to the tip-off that are totally worth investigating that people normally stay away from because they don't do the research that we do here on the Denver Dollar regarding what the tip-off would look like. Now, you can either bet on which player you think will score first in this game. Usually, I tend to stay away from that due to the fact that any player can score first on a team, and you're not getting, unless you're absolutely confident that one team is going to score first, you're not going to get good value unless you bet on every single player on that team to score first. But even if they win the tip-off, they can miss the first shot, the other team can steal the ball. There's too much for too little of a payout. You're too high of a risk for too low of a reward for me to advise it for that. Sometimes something that is absent from the betting card is which team will score first straight up. But today, when the Nuggets face off against the Knicks, that is on the betting card. So before we dive into those numbers, let's talk about who we think will win the tip-off in this game. Nikola Jokic is 6 for 9 on tip-offs on this season. Nikola Jokic is 6 for 9 on tip-offs on this season. His only losses have come to Willie Cauley-Stein, which we can believe is a fluke. We were calling for him to win the initial tip-off. He didn't win the initial tip-off, but when the game went to overtime, he won the overtime tip-off. If you watch the game closely and if you look at highlights, the ref did not throw a perfectly straight-up ball. It was a little bit favoring Willie Cauley-Stein on the initial tip-off. The overtime tip-off was more towards the middle, and he did secure that one. So that was a loss to Willie Cauley-Stein. Well, we can chalk that up as, something unlikely to happen. Another one that he lost, which was also kind of silly, was he lost to Ed Davis. Now, the Nuggets played the Timberwolves twice in a row, and Nikola Jokic won the first tip-off to Ed Davis and lost the second tip-off to Ed Davis. The reason we can say that's kind of weird is because Nikola Jokic, other than that loss to Ed Davis, hasn't lost to anyone on the tip-off under 7 feet tall. He's faced off against numerous athletic 6'10" opponents, but he's won all of those. The only one that he lost that we did predict was his loss to DeAndre Ayton when they faced off against the Suns. So again, Nikola Jokic is 6 for 9 on tip-offs, and 2 of them have been kind of weird. So he's very strong in the tip-off category. However, he's matched up against Mitchell Robinson of the New York Knicks, and he is also very strong on the tip-offs. He did not start the first 2 games for the New York Knicks. Nerlens Noel did, and in fact, they lost both of those tip-offs when they played against the Indiana Pacers and the Philadelphia 76ers. After that, Mitchell Robinson took over as the starter, and since then he's won 5 out of 7 tip-offs. He is, one of the leaders in blocks per minute in the NBA. He's an athletic freak. He has a large, long wingspan, and he's 7 feet tall. This is the type of opponent that Nikola Jokic usually does not do very well against on the tip-off. Not only that, Nikola Jokic, yes, he's 6 of 9 on the season. He's at 66.6% in terms of, securing the initial tip-off. But Mitchell Robinson's even better at 5 of 7. Those are better percents. Well, we called for the loss of DeAndre Ayton. That was the only time we called Nikola Jokic to lose, and it was accurate. We're calling for the loss of Nikola Jokic to Mitchell Robinson on the initial tip-off here. Now, the reason that is significant is because the Nuggets are locked in at minus 120 to score the first basket of this game, while the Knicks are set at minus 103. Even if Mitchell Robinson doesn't secures the initial tip-off, that is no guarantee that the Knicks will score first in the game. They could turn it over easily, and then the Nuggets could take the ball down on a fast break and score. They could miss a shot, and then the Nuggets could score. But having the first possession gives them every advantage to score first in this game. And at minus 103, those are odds I absolutely like, as compared to the fact that the Nuggets have worse odds to score first in this game at minus 120. I absolutely like the Knicks to score first in the game, considering we can expect Mitchell Robinson to win the tip-off. That'll wrap it up for today's show. There is no Nuggets basketball tomorrow, still no NHL, still no MLB. We're waiting on the other sports. But tomorrow the CU Buffs do play. We will do a quick analysis on the full CU Buffs betting card for that game tomorrow, and we will conclude tomorrow's show with NBA future talks on we'll conclude our NBA future talk, our NBA futures talks on who we think will win the NBA championship. We've already discussed all individual stats, such as MVP, Coach of the Year, Sixth Man of the Year. We've discussed all player and individual stats, but we have not discussed the race to win the championship. That is how we will conclude the show tomorrow. If you listened and you enjoyed the show, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you so much for listening.